Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lava Hot Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Connell. Today we are talking being unstoppable with the unstoppable Mike Ciorrocco. Mike is an author of the book Rocket Fuel, Converting Setbacks, Becoming Unstoppable, the founder of a company called Blooprinted, which I really hope to dive into. I want to learn a little bit more about that company. He's also co-founded Tipperosity. I think I had that name correct. Good. And he also runs the Mid-Atlantic region of Nations Lending. He's been featured by Yahoo Finance as one of the top business leaders to follow. He's the host of the What Are You Made Of podcast. And last but not least, husband and father of two. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joe. What's up, man? Great to see you. Great to be here. I always start every interview with gratitude, man, because that's what it means the world to me to be able to do this. So thank you for having me, and thank you to your audience for showing up.
Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to thank you for coming on the show. I know you're a busy man. I know that you have a lot going on. And, I appreciate you being here today to share some wisdom with my audience. And, I look forward to diving into it. I had the opportunity of getting a copy of your book and, went and read through it just to try to absorb some of the nuggets that you drop in there. For me, it's interesting. I feel like you wrote the book for me. As I'm going through it, I'm discovering, we have a lot in common, right down to one of our first mentors. I know that you worked for Joe Aida doing in-home sales. That's where I cut my teeth in sales, and, very dynamic individual. So it's pretty interesting to see that we had some of that same connection there. But what I wanted to go into initially, and it's right there on your wall. I wanted to start with, what are you made of?
Well, so you're asking me what I'm made of?
Yes, sir.
Well, yeah, I answer this differently every time. It's funny because I've said rocket fuel. I've said all kinds of different things. But what I'm made of now is I'm made of sponge. And I want to elaborate on that further. Like, I'm so obsessed with learning and figuring out what I don't know. Mm-hmm. Because I'm realizing the more I find out, the more I'm learning, the more I'm absorbing, the more power I get. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a superhero. And superheroes have power. Right. And I think we all have power inside of us that we are not aware of, or we're scared of the power that we have. And so, yeah, I would say sponge material.
Yeah, that's something that is in me as well. If I was to defer back to the book, for me, I'd say what I'm made of is a lot of the similar things came from a broken home. And, my father left the scene when I was about 1 year old, roughly. And then he would bounce in and out of my life up until the age of 15 when he died of a drug overdose. So, it was constant, back and forth. Maybe I see him, maybe I didn't. And I think for me, I was constantly looking for maybe that male role model, someone to kind of model. And then, I found that through several mentors early on as I got into my 20s, and then I just became extremely coachable. And I would say that if there was anything I was made of, it would be coachable. I searched for answers that I felt like I didn't get growing up. So, I'm always down to reach out to somebody and try to get information from them. You included, as I approached starting this podcast, you were one of the first people I reached out to, because Grant I've followed for 10 or 5 or 6 years, since about 2015. And there was a lot of information that I loved, a lot of his sales related content. And then right around 2018, I saw you, wearing the 10X hat, kind of talking the same way that you see Grant talk, with that, enthusiasm, the possibilities. And then I started seeing the momentum start to build. So for me, it was really cool to see somebody take that information and apply it and do what you've been doing. But for you to be somebody that's right in my neck of the woods, it was great to be able to see, somebody from a little town in Ocean City being able to make such an impact and such a large presence. So appreciation would be, I appreciate you paving that way or creating that blueprint for us.
Man. Thank you, man. And thank you for that feedback. I mean, look, here's the thing. One time I'll say, hey man, I'm just a normal guy from a small town and I'm able to accomplish different things. But anybody can do it. Like, you can do it too.
Yep.
So sometimes I feel that way. Other times I feel that, and I don't know which one's right, but I feel like I have this big spirit inside of me. I'm only 5'6", but 5'7" maybe on a good day.
Yep.
But I feel like I have this big being inside of me that and so maybe I'm not just a normal. I don't know. Like I don't think anybody's just a average Joe. I think, and not to use your name or Joe Aida's name, but I really think that we all have superpowers, man. And I just think that we need to find those and find out where they are, what our potential is. And so, you say that like being from I'm from Ocean City, but it really doesn't matter where you're from. It's like really what game you decide to play, and I just decided that the game I was playing, doing mortgages and just doing real estate and stuff, wasn't big enough for the being that I am.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's similar to what I experienced, over the past, 4, 5, 6 years in the marketing world. I was doing really well, or I thought I was doing really well. And then you're a part of that. So once I saw how you took scaling your brand well beyond the local market, I realized, wow, there's so much more. But I also realized, man, I wasted some time, but it's time to get to work now. So
yeah, that came from traveling. Like I didn't travel that much before. And when I started to travel to Miami and New York and LA and Scottsdale and Vegas and just all these different places, I started seeing like, wow, you can have that, like, or you can have that in your life, or, and my eyes opened up and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I got stuck. I went to Salisbury to college and got into partying and stuff. And all my friends started to leave. And I was there still with the partiers, the people that got stuck in the party world, drugs, drinking and all that. And I just like, what did I do? I feel like that blinded me to other opportunities. And I stayed and said, what can I do in this area?
Yep.
I don't know why I never even thought about moving somewhere. I don't know what that was. Like, now I'm looking back on this and you're saying that, like, I don't remember why I felt like I couldn't go somewhere else. Right. But I did feel I have a trap feeling.
Right.
And now I don't. I can tell you right now, like, I could feel like I'm not trapped. Like, I could do whatever the hell I want to.
Yeah.
But I had that feeling before. And I think a lot of people are living that feeling. I think I talked about that in the book. I talked about people getting stuck. They want their dreams, but then they have these counter intentions that pull against them, whether it's their family, their hometown, whatever it is. And then they just stay in those comfortable places.
Yep.
And I was definitely in that situation for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to get very complacent. It's easy to, for me, I thought, the income that I was making and, being able to play golf when I wanted to, just these little simple luxuries was enough. But then when I started looking at it like, wow, I really could have accomplished a heck of a lot more over the last 4 or 5 years if I really would have buckled down and got to work. But, better late than never is my, the way I'm looking at it. I think that I learned a lot over the last couple of years, developed a lot of really solid relationships. And now I think I'm setting myself up to just go for it. But
yeah, I mean, and dude, if you like playing golf, like Nutter's golf course is not the best golf course in the world, right? Like even Ocean City's got some great golf courses, but it's not the best. I was just in Scottsdale this past week and at the Waste Management Open, and wow. I've played that course before. I wouldn't have played that before until I started wanting to play a bigger game and travel, and so we have these things in our area, but if you don't go out and look and explore and experience and open yourself up to other things, you will get stuck. And a lot of people, it's a shame. They live their lives like that. And I'm not making them wrong for that. I'm just saying there's so much more out there.
Yep, absolutely. So, for me, as I was going through the book, I mean, some of the things that I jotted down, one that seems to be a common thing for you is stick to your guns. That was one bullet point that I pulled out, converting your childhood into fuel, in essence. For me, I think that's what I've always done. There's a spot in the book where you talk about, how some families, if, drug abuse was something that occurred in the family, that you may have with siblings, you could have one sibling will go one way in terms of, just buckling down and, you know, going for success. And the other one might actually pick up the bad habit.
Yeah.
You know, that's my experience. You know, I've seen that with, you know, loved ones of mine where we were all addicted. You know, we all had an addiction. My addiction just happened to be one that fuels my, you know, my family. It fuels me. It fuels my drive. You know, and I see that unfortunate setback in some family members who are steadily progressing. I mean, that's the plus side, is that, you know, they never got to a spot where they were quite as bad as, you know, maybe my father was, but definitely found that to be true in the book. That, you know, it hit home when I read that. I was like, wow, you know what, that sounds very familiar. I've also seen it the other way. I've seen wealthy families where there would be multiple siblings, and, you know, it would be the same thing. One part will get addicted to the same success, and the other one will go the other direction. So
yeah, here's what it comes down to: behaviors, like destructive behaviors or constructive behaviors.
Yep.
And that's what it really. I'm always looking at simplicity, towards or away, building or destroying, binary decisions, one way or the other. Right? Yep. It makes everything easier. I don't like complication and chaos, and I know that I can't be successful when there's chaos and confusion. So what you really have to look down to is, okay, you got an addicted personality. If you have addictive personality, what are you putting that addiction on? Are you going to put it towards something that allows you to flourish and prosper and like just absolutely live the best life, or a destructive behavior? Now, when people are doing it the destructive way, they don't understand that they're doing it that way for the most part. Until they hit rock bottom and they want out, they don't realize that. They think it's they're making decisions for a lot of times fun, a lot of times to dull pain. Yeah. And they think that's the best answer. And they don't really understand that at that point until they become aware of, look, dude, there's nothing good about drugs. Yep. You know, there's nothing. I was talking to a lady today, and her son smokes pot, and he's 17, and he's been smoking for a while. And, you know, she didn't make that big a deal of it when she was telling me. She's looking for me to mentor her son. And I said, look, there's no circumstance that marijuana is good. I don't care what they say. I don't care if it's legalized now, medicinal, recreational. I don't care what anybody says. There is zero benefit of marijuana for a person that's living and thriving. Now, if you have cancer and you're chemo and you're trying to, like, you're dying and you just need to dull the pain or something because of that, you know, I could see that, but not for anyone that is trying to live and thrive. There's zero benefit. And I used to smoke pot. I got into it when I was in college. I didn't think it was that big a deal. I didn't get into it thinking that it was going to lead to, you know, cocaine or ecstasy or other drugs. But it did. And I didn't expect that. I didn't plan for that to happen. Right. And before you know it, I was knee deep in a party world where I, like, every weekend is like, what's going on? Where's the parties? And that's, man, like, I look back at that and I just, you know, I was going through a session with, when I was out in LA working on my mind, and I was talking to a lady, and I'm really, really obsessed right now with reaching my potential. And I was talking to a lady, and we were going back through the college days and stuff. And we were talking about some of the things that I did and experienced, and I couldn't even believe I was talking about myself. I couldn't believe that I was I was that person I was talking. It made me sick. Yeah. And, but when you're in the midst of it, during it, you just really don't realize how bad it is. Yep.
So tell me about the book. So, I want to know what inspired you to, one, start the podcast, but also, you know, the book to go with it. You know, I want to know what inspired that thought. And then, you know, if you don't mind kind of elaborating on the book a little bit for, you know, who it's for.
Yeah. So, for the longest time, I didn't confront my childhood or things that I've been through. I just thought it was ordinary. I thought everybody goes through these things, and kind of dusted under the carpet and lived my life, despite the fact that I was being limited and held back by some of the things I wasn't confronting. And see, some people think confronting things or confrontation is a bad thing, and it's really not. It's a positive thing. And people that avoid confrontation, like, you'll hear somebody, oh, he doesn't like confrontation. I don't like confrontation. The only reason people don't like confrontation or think it's a positive thing is if they have done something that they think is wrong. Yep. And they avoid confrontation because of that feeling subconsciously. If you are concerned with making sure that people progress and prosper and you want to improve people and yourself, then when that happens, you don't have any problem with confronting things.
Right.
And so I wasn't confronting things. And for the longest time, so I saw some other people on stage at some events I went to, and I heard them tell their story. And I was like, you know what? I have a story like that. I thought I felt like on one hand, I was the only one. Number two, though, I also felt like it was just an ordinary thing. Like, who cares about a story about ordinary things everybody's going through? But then I started to realize that everybody's got a story to tell.
Yeah.
And by not telling your story, you're underestimating the power of your story to inspire millions of people. So I started thinking this way, and I'm like, wow, look, I grew up in a broken home. I don't remember my parents together. A lot of brokenness, alcohol, drug addicts, suicide, mental, depression, mental problems. And growing up around that, a lot of times I just kept noticing that people they were telling themselves and other people a story of why they were doing those things. And they were buying into that story, because that's what we do. When you tell a story of why you're failing, you're telling it so that you can justify what you're doing, what you're justifying failure,
right? So
that you can live with yourself. And at a young age, I was able to pick up on that. I don't know how or why. And I would call them out on their bullshit. And I would say something to them like, look, you're telling the story. That's not true. And you're just buying it, and you're making an excuse for yourself. And then that would cause confrontation, right? That would cause resentment in some of them. But I didn't care, because I knew I was on to something. I knew I was on the right thing. And if me standing up for them and myself by calling them out on their BS meant that they didn't want to be around me anymore, that was probably better. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
So I went through this in my head, and I would just confront them. And so then I started thinking to myself, well, if I'm going to get on people about telling the story themselves of why they're failing, I got to start telling myself a story of why I'm going to be successful. So my whole life, I started living this life of, okay, I got to be successful, and here's why. Coming from the brokenness, though, my dad, I moved in with my dad when I was 8 years old, because my mom was moving on to her third marriage, and I didn't want to move into another man's house, learn another man's rules. And so I gave my dad's house a try, and he was moving on to his second marriage. And it was great at first, but I soon found out my stepmother had some jealousy issues, some mental issues, and she would take it out on me. And she did not get along with my dad's side of the family, my mom. And for a couple of years, I went through a lot of abuse, a lot of things that I should never heard as a kid, seen. And, I found myself always trying to please her so that I would avoid, like, I was in a situation to, like, just survive, like, find out the best way to get on her good side so I didn't have to deal with any of the crap, right?
Yeah.
And so at some point I realized that that's not an ordinary life. I shouldn't be living that way. My mom filed court papers after me telling her about it. And that's when she said, stick to your guns. Because, when these court papers come to your dad's house, they're going to try to talk you out of it. And you need to stick to your guns, because when you believe in something in life, people will try to talk you out of your beliefs to match their own agenda, or to pull you down to their level. And you want to be, you want to be an inspiring, you want to be a leader, like right now, I want to be a superhero. I don't want to conform. You got to stick to your guns.
Right.
And so when my dad got these court papers delivered to him, he confronted me. And my dad was my hero. He was a hard worker, had these big forearms and rough hands. He was a mason. He laid brick and block concrete. And he confronted me about this. And he said, hey, I don't know why you'd want to leave here. You got everything you need. Your mom doesn't have any money. She's got men coming in and out of the house. Why would you want to leave here? And I said, I was thinking, stick to your guns, stick to your guns. So I didn't argue with him. I said, no, I'm not getting into this discussion. Yep. And he used to carry this wad of $100 bills with him all the time, which I thought was cool. He used to show the money to us all the time. And he always had this wad. And I just remember that. I was like, that was cool. I wanted that.
Yeah.
And when I said, I'm not talking about it, he said, okay. So he took that wad out and he peeled up one of the $100 bills off, crumpled it up and threw it at me. He said, you're going to need this then when you're living on the streets with your mother one day. And that lit a spark in me back in, I don't even know what year that was, in the late 80s, that mid 80s, that I just, that spark would never be put out again.
Right.
Like that. I just knew that I was never going to let him win with that comment. And for the longest time, I used that toxic fuel to charge me, to push me forward, to propel me in tough times. And then I realized once I refined my engine and I developed through personal development and mentorship, that eventually that fuel doesn't work anymore. Right. It gets you to a certain point, but beyond that point, you need something else. And that something else was when I opened up my mind and my belief that I could achieve anything, my dreams, my targets, my goals, that's what started pulling me forward. And that's such a higher octane fuel for a refined engine, like myself. And like a lot of people that get to this point. So I wrote the book about that. I wrote the book about the mentorships that I went through recently, about my life and the stories and lessons I learned, because I wanted to share those with people because maybe somebody else is going through the same thing and can relate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like one of the bullet points that I pulled from the book, you know, because anytime you start something like a podcast or a new business or what have you, you get a little bit of the individuals that will, are you sure that's what you want to do? You know, you really want to put yourself out there, or just the hater cycle, you know, people that they just don't get it. So, you know, they hate a little bit, you know, it maybe they gave up on a dream at some point and, you know, they just don't want to see you go any further from their level.
Yeah, it's not necessarily about giving up on a dream either. It could be the fact that they quit or they failed.
Yeah.
And see, when you have failures in your life, they stick with you. And if you're not careful and clear out the decisions that you make right after a failure, like every time you fail, you make a decision.
Yep.
Think about it. And you tell yourself a story of why you failed. And usually you aim at the wrong target.
Right.
Of why you failed instead of taking responsibility for yourself. You make a decision at that moment. That decision sticks with you throughout your life until you go back to that decision and change that decision.
Yep.
So for example, you know, I started to go out there as a young kid and try to promote myself or extrovert out there, and somebody busted my chops and they teased me right as a kid. Right after that, you didn't have success with it. So you failed, quote unquote. And then you get this thought in your head, well, shoot, I'm never doing that again. That thought subconsciously or consciously sticks with you. And then in the future, you go out to try to do something. You get a sales job and they say, hey, we need to go make calls and you need to go promote yourself on social, do some videos, this and that. And you're like, hell with that, I ain't doing that. I'm not doing that. And then they see other people doing it and you're like, why are you guys doing that? That's kind of weird. Don't you realize you're going to like get people like hating on you and stuff? Like, why would you do that? Because you made a decision back then when you failed, or you got somebody busted your chops when you were a kid, that I'm never doing that again.
Right.
So that's what it all stems from.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny story to kind of piggyback on that. I remember when I was a teenager, I was big into hip hop, as most people that grew up in that Eminem era were. And, you know, I had friends and we would all rap, and I went to do an open mic at one point, and I totally, if you've seen the movie 8 Mile, I B-rabbit it right there on, you know, with the mic in my hand. I just had to walk away. But I carried that with me. Anytime I got in front of a microphone, it was like that, like immediate, like anxiety, freeze up, the whole deal.
Yep.
So, you know, recently I've been saying that, you know, I'm all about discomfort. Within the last month, I've been trying to do things that make me extremely uncomfortable to the point that I become comfortable in doing them. So, you know, one metaphorical thing that I've been doing, if you've ever seen anybody sit in like the cold ice bathing, I started doing that about 2 weeks ago. And, you know, the first day I got in there, it was, you know, in its 40s, and you get in and I'm one of those guys, you got to jump all in. So, you know, I can't tiptoe my way in. I just hop in. And the moment I went in, it was like all the air in my lungs just escaped my body. And if you've ever been in really cold water, it's like, your body's like screaming for it.
I'm not like, that's one thing that I'm not scared of. I just don't feel like doing it. Like, nah, no, thanks. I'll watch you guys do it. But, you know, like how do you avoid hypothermia?
Probably just get more comfortable with cold water if I was to guess.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah. But
how long are you staying there?
So the first day I was in there for a solid minute. I rounded up a little bit. It was just so cold, and, you know, I just wasn't feeling it. And my goal when I did that first time was, I'm going to work my way up to 5 minutes. And I gave myself 30 days to do it. And then right around day 13, I was in for about 3 minutes. I was like, you know what I'm going for? I'm going to just go for 5 minutes. I ended up doing it for 6 minutes. So I was in there for
what does it feel like? Like at that, like, obviously you get the shock initially, right?
Yep.
But is it like when you put ice on a wound or something, like it starts to burn, like freezer burn feeling?
Yeah. So you get that. So, I'm using this as a great analogy because you go through that first 1 to 3 minutes it's like, I'm not doing it. So when I did that 6 minutes, when I got to about 4 minutes, 6 minutes was fine. It was like, you know what, I could do 6 minutes. I'm just going to, and I didn't even choose 6 minutes.
But what's the problem though? Like when you're doing it, does it burn? Yeah,
it will burn. Like it'll burn, you know, certain parts of your body will burn. You start to feel numb. You can start, you know, for me, I start shivering, if you will. But what I found was when you first get in, it's the worst. And to go where I've been the longest, I've been in for 10 minutes. And what I found is when I got in, the day after I did 6 minutes, I was in and I was like, oh man, it's cold today. I'm only going for 3 minutes. There's, you know, forget, you know, trying to set a new bar. And then when 3 minutes rolled around, I was like, you know what? I was starting to get a little bit more comfortable and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to push it to 5 minutes. And then I was like, you know what? I might as well go to 6 minutes. And then before I knew it, I was talking myself into a 7th minute and just pushing a little further. I was like, well, I've been here 7 minutes. Might as well go for 9. And then when 9 rolled around, it was 10. And, you know, and I ended up beating, you know, my goal, if you will, that I set, you know, much sooner, and I doubled it. And to me, it was, I had to go through the 1 to 2 minutes of discomfort and the incremental discomfort to eventually get to a point where I was comfortable enough to where I could just do whatever. So I use that as a mindset for this show, where I used to hate being on camera. I used to hate talking on a microphone, but I just committed myself to doing so many episodes that I would have no choice. I would be uncomfortable through some of the process.
And that'll carry. And by the way, like anything you do in your life, like these different areas, they affect all other areas of your life. It can't help it. If you do something bad in an area of your life, it's going to affect everything else negatively.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, so how did you set this up? Like, did you set up your own tub or something?
No. So I went to a hardware store and bought like a horse trough. Yeah. So it's just a big metal horse trough. Keep it outside. What if you get stuck in it though? Like, is there a way that your body would just freeze up and you wouldn't be able to move? No. You know, I normally make sure somebody comes out there just to make sure I don't die. But
I was going to say, yeah.
But yeah, it hasn't been that uncomfortable yet. Although when I first did it, my legs got so numb. I was like, crap, how am I getting out of this thing? Like,
do you use the Wim Hof like breathing method?
Sort of. So I've watched Wim Hof. I've watched a couple of videos of different guys that do that. So I do some sort of like breathing exercise before I get. I did not do that when I first started.
Yeah.
I just went straight in and I did a breathing exercise, but it wasn't the right one. I can promise you. So, but no, yeah. I mean, you know, for me, it was just, you know, I want to get out of my comfort zone and, you know.
What other benefit did you get from it though? Like, did you notice anything in your body besides that?
Yes.
Just the fact that you're overcoming something?
So for me, the main thing was mental. But when it was originally introduced to me, it was introduced to me by my uncle, who is in his 50s and is in great shape. And, you know, he said that, you know, for years and years, he would always have like this one layer of fat that like he just couldn't break. And he said when he started doing, you know, the cold plunges, like immediately, like fat loss started just coming off. So I thought that what I've experienced is I've dropped about 4 or 5 pounds. I don't know if it's, you know, I haven't changed anything in my diet. That's the only thing that I've really introduced. Right. So, you know, maybe that's it. But, you know, for me, it was really just the mental thing. You know, I've seen from a lot of different authors that, you know, they'll talk about that. Ed Milet as one of them. And Tony Robbins, you know, that's something that he does. But, you know, I don't think it's required for success. I think it is required if you want something to get you out of your comfort zone, though.
Yeah, I might try it one day, but I'm not interested in it now. That's for sure. I don't even like jumping in the pool in the summertime when it's cool.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Yep. But so, you know, before we land the plane, I wanted to go, you know, I started this by saying that you kind of laid out a blueprint for me personally, but that would be a great segue into your company, Blooprinted. Sorry. You know, can you tell us and share with us what you have going on there? And I know that you have an event that's coming up, so, you know, love to.
Yeah, man. We this weekend actually is in Miami. We have a 2-day mastermind, but Blooprinted was a concept that I came up with because of the fact that my whole life, no matter what I wanted, I went and got it. Like I always get what I want because I'm relentless. Mm-hmm. And I use the word inexorable a lot. INEXORABLE, inexorable. It means unyielding and unable to be stopped. And I think to myself all the time, like, I'm inexorable, I'm inexorable, I'm inexorable. It's just a different word to use instead of unstoppable. Mm-hmm. And so, but all my life I look back and I was thinking to myself, like, I never really knew how to do anything. Like, I never knew the steps to do anything. I just figured it out. Now, that is the best way to do things, of course. If you don't know the steps, it doesn't mean that you should stop until you figure out the steps. You need to act, commit to it, and do it anyway. However, what if we had the steps? Mm-hmm. I started thinking to myself, if I would have had all the steps to the things I wanted to achieve, how much more I could accomplish, how further along I would have been, what that would have meant to the people around me. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking, what if we could create a marketplace where experts come in and they build their step-by-step processes in different categories, whether it's travel, real estate, tech, relationships, marketing, you name it. And you could go in and search a topic. Let's say I wanted to start a podcast, for example. Well, I built the blueprint for how to start a podcast, step-by-step guide with milestones and tasks. And it's not a digital course like you'd sit there and consume course. It's actionable steps. It tells you, do this, do this, do this. As long as you do all the steps, you should get the outcome. And that's what we created with Blooprinted. And now we're loading creators into the platform. They're building their blueprints. And we're going to start marketing them and selling the blueprints for people to start becoming unstoppable at achieving a specific outcome.
Cool. So, for instance, I guess that I had on the show a few weeks ago is a guy who's in car sales. Here locally, Pohanka, he's been just dominating and killing it. Sold like 600 cars last year. I did the math. He sold about 26,000 or 26 million in cars, which, for the size of transaction, I mean, it's a pretty decent deal. Yeah. But I asked him the same thing because he's built, a pretty good name in the market and, has cultivated a following and, ultimately figured out a way to, on appointment only, still operate a car sales operation where he's selling at the magnitude that he is, and it's all by appointment only. And I asked him, like, have you ever considered putting together some sort of course or blueprint or something like that? And he said it's something he's thought about. And what he was saying is, the problem is, how long it would take for me to even try to put that together. For you guys, how you guys do something where you help with that process, correct?
Yeah, we have a project management team that actually works with people they interview them and then basically have an outline for people to go through to develop their blueprint. So it's like, okay, if I wanted to be that car guy, for example, like, where did I start? What's the first thing I ever did? Mm-hmm. That's the first step. That's the first thing you need to do. You create a milestone based on the first thing you did and the tasks that are associated with that. And then you move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. If that guy was, like, not just him, but anybody, documented their success as they were going through it, their confidence level would be through the roof because they know they can replicate it again. They can, if they had to start all over, they could do it again. They know for a fact that because they have it documented. If you don't have it documented, then you're basing everything off your head and the confidence level dips big time. You also know that you can duplicate it with other people and you can scale. Yep. So that's why it's so huge and beneficial to be able to document your success, because if you don't document your success, you feel like a lot of times that you're lucky with your success because you don't really know what you did. You don't have the clarity. And this is what this allows. And a lot of the creators that are coming into Blooprinted, and by the way, that's spelled blue, BLOO printed. A lot of the creators that are coming in are having breakthroughs in confidence because they're realizing that they can do it again. And it wasn't luck what they achieved. They had no idea really all the stuff they went through until they go through our process. Cool.
Yeah. I would imagine as you start to unravel some of the things that you did to be successful, I could definitely see that being beneficial in just building that initial confidence. But yeah, being able to even have that as a blueprint that could be sold to, the marketplace for individuals that may be in that same career path, but to also be able to use that as a roadmap if you're deciding to build a team. I would imagine that that's something that comes about quite often as well. So
that's scaling. Yeah. In order to scale.
Yep. So tell me about Nations Lending. Like, more specifically, what I'm curious about is how culture-wise because I know in the book you speak on culture a good bit, and I wanted to learn, what it is that you implement within your business to develop a solid culture that has led to the success that you guys have been seeing.
Yeah, for the longest time when we first started, it was all about production. I just need to get production. I just need to get production. And we would sacrifice our culture. We would sacrifice our core values, which we didn't even really have, for production. And I would come home at night miserable. We wouldn't be making money, and I'd be coming home miserable because the people that we brought in weren't aligned with my core values. They weren't aligned with me.
Right.
But yet they produced. So, and I was thinking, well, they produce, they'll bring money in. We need the money. But I would come home and be impatient with my kids, just miserable. And I was like, this is no way to live a life. So I started doing some research, getting mentorship in business. And I started to realize that you need core values. And the reason that you need core values and a mission is so that you can filter everything that you do from your thoughts, words, and actions, and your environment and the people that you keep in your environment through your mission and core values. So I was like, man, I didn't realize. I knew people had those, but I didn't understand the importance of them. I didn't understand the practicality of them. So we got together, my leadership team, and said, guys, look, here's what we got to do. We have to get a mission. We have to have our core values, because if we don't have anything to filter things through. Right. So I had to sell my leadership team on doing this. And then once they started to understand, because they didn't understand just like I didn't understand, a while back. So I realized that. Then we established a culture and said, look, we start with culture first. And even if it's just me by myself and one other person, for example, I'll go back to 2 people, 3 people, whatever it is, that buy into this culture and mission, and add one person at a time until we get it big again. Because there's no way in heck I'm going to continue to go forward with all the people and then not be in alignment. So we created core values, and our core values are an acronym for vitals. Mm-hmm. And every letter, of course, in an acronym means something. So V means vibes matter and emotions are contagious. We pay attention to that. We don't let emotion get into business. Emotion should only be in business to celebrate, because Sharon Lecter, a friend of mine who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki and many other books, she said that high emotions lead to low intelligence. So it's okay to have low intelligence when you're celebrating, I guess, but only have emotions when you're celebrating. So that's V, vibes matter, emotions are contagious. The I stands for imagine, no lids, endless potential. Yeah. And the reason for that is that imagination is, to me, more important than facts, more powerful than facts. Imagination can overtake a fact, because imagination can create something that never existed before. Facts are things that people have seen before and existed before. Right. So we understand that there's no limits. The T is in vitals is take 100% responsibility. And I mentioned this earlier, when you fail, you pick the wrong target to blame. The only target when you fail to blame is yourself. Yep. 100% responsibility. And that's how we do it throughout our organization. We don't have people pointing fingers. The A stands for all setbacks are rocket fuel. That goes to the book, Turning Setbacks into Rocket Fuel. The L stands for leadership starts with me. I don't care what position you're in. I don't care who you are, how long you've been there. It doesn't matter. Everybody's a leader. And leadership starts with you before you can lead other people. Yep. And finally, S, success is the only option. Yep. So those are the core values that we go by. We do meetings with our employees. If we ever have an issue that arises, we talk through our core values when we're talking to the person. Mm-hmm. Hey, man, look, that's not really taking 100% responsibility. Hey, look, your emotions are getting in the best of us. And we say us instead of you. They're getting the best of us, and emotions are contagious, man. Like, we got to pay attention to that. So we'll role play or script our conversations through our core values.
Very cool. Well, Mike, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us and, to talk about a number of different things, from leadership to the book. I do want to ask, is there anything that you wish I would have asked in this interview?
No, not really. I mean, look, if anybody's interested in anything that I'm doing, just go to Instagram at Mikey Ciorrocco, MikeyCroc. You can go to Clubhouse. I'm on there speaking a lot, and or LinkedIn. You can find me very easily, and check out my content. If anything vibes with you, whether it's Blooprinted, whether it's the other tech product, Tipperosity, or any of my coach, anything, man, just reach out. I'm very, very open to engaging with people that message me. And I just want to help people, man. My mission is that all people are unstoppable to live in the life of their dreams. And that means everybody. Yes, sir. Cool. Yep. That was the next thing I was going to ask, where everybody should go to follow you. I definitely recommend that you go and get a copy of the book. The book was incredible.
but also go check him out on his podcast, the What Are You Made Of podcast. Incredible show. How many episodes are you in now? You're
probably 200.
Yeah, I was going to say you have to be close to 200 or over. Cool. Yeah. Well, Mike, I appreciate you joining us, and
thanks, Joe.
I appreciate your somewhat mentorship as I started the process of getting this thing rolling.
Yeah, man. Anytime, man. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks.